Hallo iedereen, ik ben Sebastian Ortiz en vandaag bij Tankenberg News zijn we met wereldbekende econoom Walter Blok. Walter, I want to ask you some questions today from all your teenage girl fans here in the Netherlands.
Thanks for having me on your show again. Good to be with you.
Now, you have a BA in philosophy from Brooklyn College and a PhD in economics from Columbia University.
Correct.
I will read to you a quote, and I want to know if you know the work. The rain steamed on, the rain streamed on them till they smoked. He gathered her lovely, heavy posteriors, one in each hand, and pressed them in towards him in a frenzy, quivering motionless in the rain. Then, suddenly, he tipped her up and fell with her on the path, in the roaring silence of the rain, and short and sharp he took her, short and sharp, and finished, like an animal. Do you know what work of literature this is?
This sounds like Ayn Rand, but I'm not sure which of her books it would be. I don't think Atlas Shrugged. Maybe We Living or The Fountainhead. How
This
is
is
my guess?
actually D.H. Lawrence,
Oh, D.H.
La-
Lawrence.
Lady Chatterley's lover.
Wow. I thought Ayn Rand.
Yes, and that's the reason why I wanted to bring it up, pun intended, because a lot of people critique her, I believe unjustly, for her sexual scenes in her novels. Now, I understand that you had recently an interview in person with painter Victor Pross.
Yes, Victor is a buddy of mine. We're friends, and he's interviewed me several times. And most recently, I had a debate with Paul Geddes on Israel, and he orchestrated that.
I want to ask you, are you familiar with this book by Andrew Wheatcroft? Andrew Wheatcroft, historian, called The Enemy at the Gate, Habsburgs, Ottomans, and the Battle for Europe.
No, I'm not familiar with that. Sorry to say.
It's very good. I recommend it.
Thank you.
Do you like the works of Salvador Dali?
Yeah, I do. The melting clocks. Yeah.
As you may well know, Salvador Dali was from a noble family in Catalonia, and he got expelled from the art academy. And when he was often compared to Picasso, who claimed fashionably to be a communist when he was in exile in France, Dali was famous for saying, Picasso is a Spaniard, so am I. Picasso is a painter, so am I. Picasso is a communist, neither am I. Now,
good for good for Dolly.
I don't want to name names, but a certain German is an anarcho capitalist, so am I. A certain German is an advocate of the Austrian School of Economics, so am I. A certain German is very woke and anti Israel, neither am I. Having said that, just for the sake of jealousy and envy, what can you tell Victor Pross about my painting?
Oh wow. Well, I'm not really much of an I'm not an artist at all, except some people would say I'm a BS artist. uh,
I am told the same thing all the time.
well, that shows we're doing a good job if the correct people tell us that. Um, uh,
Yes, I
I'm
think
not
that if you're hated, that is probably an indication that you're doing things right.
well. if you're hated, it depends upon by whom. If you're hated
That's
by
true.
commies and fascists and wokesters, then you're doing a good job. If you're hated by good people, then that's not good.
Yeah,
And happily, most of the people who hate me, I'm happy that they hate me, or at least hate my ideas, like my old buddy Bernie Sanders. But as for your art, I'm not really competent to say much about it because I don't have any art background. But I like your art. I would hang that up in my house if I had a copy of that. But you can't
I
put
pro-
too much weight on that because I'm not really good at art. I'm much what's the word, more comfortable about music and very much and more intense about music. I love Mozart, Bach, Handel, Haydn, Vivaldi, and the boys. And I really love them and I revere them. Their music, that is. I don't know about their politics. I don't want to know about their politics.
yeah, I
So
would say the same thing, that art is also not my thing. I personally prefer my wife's artworks. You have one of them, but
okay.
one of the things I can say is that, well, you mentioned music. I play the guitar. I like more popular 20th century music. I want to ask you, what would be the favorite song, not an educated piece of classical music, but song that you like or have liked for a long time that you can
Well,
remember?
Handel's Messiah is my one favorite piece of music, and he's got a lot of songs in there. Um, I also play the violin. I'm what's called a hit violinist. If you hate your neighbor, you hire me to play near his house and go squeak, squeak, squeak. I'm a very poor violinist, but I did play the violin.
What about Isaac Perlin, niet Barenboim, Isaac Perlman, the violinist? Do you know
Ah,
him?
oh, well, he's great. He's one of the best violinists ever to play the violin.
Yes. Are you as good as he is?
That's a good joke. I
Now,
can squeak better than him.
the highfalutin stuff of the Messiah. I mean, I understand you're Jewish, so you have a Messiah complex. But what I mean is, what song, normal song that you can hear on the radio, you remember liking a lot throughout your
Well,
life?
I like the Beatles. I like Elvis Presley. Jailhouse Rock by Elvis is good.
Jailhouse Rock. Now, I
All
want
of a
to ask you
sudden,
one.
both of our faces are disappeared. Are we still communicating?
Yes, I can still see your face.
Maybe we've been cut off. I shouldn't have mentioned Jailhouse Rock. Oh, now we're back.
But I have a question here. So, here's the situation. The Sinai was part of Egypt, and it was taken by Israel after the Six-Day War, and then it was given back to Egypt after a peace treaty. Some people who are fervent supporters of Israel say that in light of the violations of the ceasefire that by Hamas, that Israel has a moral imperative to just go take over the Gaza Strip, evacuate the Arab inhabitants, and start from scratch. What is your position regarding this?
Oh, I agree. And I also think that Israel never should have left the Sinai Peninsula. They won it fair and square in a war started by Egypt. And when country A attacks country B unwarranted, and country B wins, and country B occupies a part of country A, it should keep it. You have a nice tie. If I grab your tie and somehow we have a fight, and in the fight you grab my shirt, well, you should keep my shirt. Not that you might want it, but the idea here is that Israel only fought defensive wars. And when you fight a defensive war and you end up part of the war that started by someone else, you end up with their territory. I don't see why you should leave. Eisenhower compelled Israel to leave. And I think Eisenhower, after he was president, said that one of his biggest mistakes in office was doing just that. So I take that position on the Sinai Peninsula, and I also take the same position on the Gaza. They were supposed to deliver live people, and they did. And they were supposed to deliver, I think, 28 dead bodies, and they delivered 8, I think. I'm not sure, but they did not deliver 28. They broke their treaty. They broke it, and I think Israel would be morally entitled to march right back in there and kick them out. And not only didn't they return their bodies, they're now killing Klansmen from Palestine, Palestinian Klansmen in Gaza. They're reasserting their power. They were supposed to disarm, and instead they're assassinating dozens of people who are opposing their unjust rule. So I think Israel would be entirely entitled to march right back in there and save some of the Gazans, because the Gazans are being killed by the Hamas. So I would certainly agree with that assessment.
I have a letter from a Japanese teenager girl from Belgium. It's a very long letter, so I'll read it. If a man aggresses against the lives and property of innocent persons, let's say he is in the process of murdering them and burning their property down, in order to stop these heinous acts, one may justly use force, even proportionally more than the aggressor himself is doing. Hard in this case, since he is murdering, in order to stop the aggression. During this quote unquote war, he is in interaction with people surrounding him. His employer still employs him. His wife still cooks for him. His landlord still provides him with shelter, etc. He also uses the property of unknown third parties, hiding behind their houses, walking in large crowds, etc. And he pays special attention not to fight
I'm sorry,
near
all of a
places,
sudden, hiding behind, you cut out, and now
hiding
the
behind
pictures have
their
gone up
houses.
again. So I'm not sure where we're going.
During this war, he is in interaction with people surrounding him.
I don't know
His
if you can hear
employer.
me.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Now I can hear you, but our pictures went away for a minute. I'm sure you can edit this out later.
I can still see you. I try not to do any editing before I become a millionaire. So
Okay, well, we can send it out unedited. What the heck? There are glitches in communication.
yeah,
Uh,
nobody's perfect. During
right.
this war, he is in interaction with people surrounding him. His employer still employs him. His wife still cooks for him. His landlord still provides him with shelter, etc. He also uses the property of unknown third parties, hiding behind their houses, walking in large crowds, and he pays special attention not to fight near places that he values. The heritage of his country, his church, his family's properties, etc. Can the victims of this man's aggression forcibly forbid the people around him from helping him when in reality this help does not directly contribute to his aggressive acts? In other words, do the aggressive actions of him legally bind all other persons to stop interacting with him, even though these interactions themselves aren't aggressive in nature? Are these persons and their property, if they decide not to stop interacting with him, instead up for grabs? And can force be used against them, their houses bombed, the owners and bystanders killed, etc.? As I understand it, the answer follows from this short definition of what constitutes justice, according to Frank van Doon. The essence of justice is to make a proper and careful distinction between persons so that no one may be confused with another, and that the burdens or the benefits of one may not befall another. The bodies or property which an aggressor is using as means for continuing his offensive force or for protection against defensive force are not made his property by this usage. Therefore, it is still required to obtain the explicit consent of the actual owners to commit destruction of them in your defensive force against this aggressor. Now, of course, the reason why I disagree with this position is that I am inspired by Thomas of Aquinas, who says that in times of war, things are held in common because things are being used to prevail and to survive. Now, what is your position regarding this letter that we received from a Japanese teenage girl from Belgium?
Wow, a very bright girl. Um, That's tough. Let me try to dig at it a little bit. First, the proportionality thing. If you're coming at me with a knife and you're threatening to kill me, I and I have a gun, and a gun is more powerful than a knife. I think I can be disproportional. I don't have to grab a knife and fight you on even terms. If I have a gun or a bazooka or something, and you're marching at me, yelling that you're going to kill me, um, again, I can't see you anymore, so I don't know what that means, but
That's
I'll
fine. I'm
continue.
still here.
If you're marching at me with a knife and I have a gun, I think I can shoot you. Uh, I think I would be justified in shooting you, even though this would be disproportional. So I'm not a big fan of this. Did you hear what I say, or should I say that again? The proportionality.
I heard last, so I am not a big fan of this.
Well, let me say it again. If you're coming at me with a knife, yelling you're going to kill me, and I have a gun, and a gun is not proportional to a knife, I don't think I'm obligated to look for a knife so that I can meet you on proportional basis. I think I can shoot you, and I would be justified.
What
Okay.
about the part where he says, if you do not obtain consent from these persons and owners, which retain the right to refuse using their bodies and properties, this constitutes, in effect, the initiation of aggression against these persons, the people who are being used as a human shield.
Right. Well, I'm now going to come at you with uh, with my two children strapped on me, and now I have the knife, and I'm going to kill you. You're a dirty Jew. I'm the Hamas. You're an Israeli. I'm going to kill you. And I'm screaming, I'm going to kill you. And you have a gun. And if you shoot me here, you'll shoot my innocent children who I'm using as a shield. Are you justified in shooting me? I would say yes. Libertarianism, the philosophy upon which I base my answers, is not a suicide pact. So I think you're entitled to shoot me. However, you just shot innocent people. Who is responsible for the deaths of these children? You, me, or half and half, both of us? I would say you. I am entirely responsible for this. I shouldn't be putting my children right here and having you shoot me. Now, a more complication of this is if you shoot me here, you will have a 100% chance of stopping me. If you shoot me here, you'll save my children, but you only have a 50% chance of stopping me because my chest is bigger than my head. Are you obligated to aim here, where you only have a 50% chance of getting me? And by the way, you've got your children behind you, and I'm going to kill you all. Well, I don't think you're obligated to shoot here. I think you're entitled to shoot right here, where you can stop me for sure. And this is the situation that Israel is involved in with regard to Hamas. Even the Nazis didn't do that. Even the Nazis didn't hide behind women and children.
I have a comment to make here. My own position is that whoever starts it pays for it. Whoever starts it initiates force. They are the person responsible. The responsibility for collateral damage or third parties is also on the aggressor. It cannot be on the victim. To do so is to turn against the victim. And as a matter of fact, I think that if someone initiates force against you, then you can use all means necessary to repel the attack, to make the attack cease if the aggressor does not stop at your request. Now, some people find this cruel, but the fact of the matter is that the comments that are very cozy and warm that you mentioned about fairness in war strike me as projecting the bigotry of Western culture, that is, being used to things like the Geneva Convention and treaties the uh, on the criminal actions in war, and even the theory of just war that goes back to Saint Augustine of Hippo. These are Western values. Now, I want to ask you: are you familiar with the so-called Reconquista of the Iberian Peninsula?
No, I'm sorry to say that I'm not. What's happening on the Iberian Peninsula?
The Reconquista was a historical process by which the Christian kingdoms of Spain took over after 700 years of warfare the conquered areas that the Islamic Al-Andalus had conquered by force. It started from the northwest of Spain, from the area of Asturias and Galicia, and it was a process that followed a conquest by Islamic rulers of Spain not long after the fall of the Roman Empire. And it took until around the year 1500. I believe the last battle was in the year 1492, the fall of Granada, for the Christians to take back what is now Portugal and Spain. Did you know about this historical struggle?
Yeah, I did. I didn't realize when you had the Spanish pronunciation. Sure, I'm aware of that. That's part of high school history. And I think that Spain was entitled to repel the Islamic conquerors of territory, just taking back what was their own.
Now, I want to read to you again a quote and ask you if you know the source of the text. Love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord. Do you know where this comes from?
Jesus Christ?
Actually, this comes from the Torah, from Leviticus 19:18. Do not seek revenge or bear a grudge against anyone among your people, but love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord.
Well, Jesus was a Jew, so I wasn't too far off.
By the way, since you called me earlier Dirty Jew when you were giving your illustration, I am from Costa Rica, so my ancestors are actually natives of the Americas and Spaniards.
I'm sorry I called you a dirty Jew, but I wanted to make it cinema verite.
Yes, you wanted to emphasize the hostilities.
Yeah.
Now, of course, in the West, the Christian tradition that you mentioned starts in Israel, Nazareth, and all of that, 2,000 years of the idea of pray for those who are hostile to you so that they may come to the light, seems to me to be completely absent from the critics of Israel, in light of the fact that Israel makes sure to let people know where they're going to strike, when they're going to strike, for what strategic purpose, making sure that women and children are evacuated from the area. Can you tell me a little bit about the hyperbolic rhetoric of the critics of Israel?
Well, before I do, I just wanted to run by another aphorism. Praise the Lord, but pass the ammunition. It's another famous phrase. I don't know where I got it from. You're much more scholarly about this. You know where you got these quotes from. But praise the Lord means, yes, don't seek revenge, but pass the ammunition. Let's fight those guys. They're attacking us. We have every right to fight them. We don't have to hate them. What did they say? Don't get mad, just get even. You don't have to get mad at them. Just shoot them.
This is what my wife says to me all the time.
Well, your wife is a very bright woman and a very good artist too. With regard to your question about the critics of Israel, they're saying that they're responsible for genocide. I mean, genocide is purposefully killing masses of people. If there's any genocide going on in the Middle East in the last 2 or 3 years, it was on October 7th, where they killed 1,200 people, which is a significant number of Israelis, because the Israelis are only 9 million. But the the Jews, look, if the Jews wanted to commit genocide against the Gazans, look, they beat Egypt in 6 days. It wouldn't take 6 days for them to commit genocide against the 2 million Gazans. 6 hours, they could kill them all. Instead, what they do when the Hamas puts rocket launchers in the middle of a hospital or in the middle of a school or in the middle of a residential area or in the middle of a mosque, the Israelis don't blast away, even though they're entitled to do so because rockets are coming out of that hospital. What they do is they send out a letter, a leaflet, a telephone call saying, look, we're going to bomb you in 6 hours, go away. And that's not the activity of a genocidal country. That's the activity of a country that wants to preserve life, innocent lives. And I'm not so sure how many innocents there are because on October 8th, they were all dancing in the streets. Now, the average army over all of past history, for every military enemy that they kill 9 civilians. 9 civilians for every soldier that they kill. What is the IDF ratio? The Israel Defense Force ratio is 1 to 1.5. Namely, the Israelis are very, very careful about killing non-combatants. I would argue maybe even too cautious, because what they should have done, if I were the general there, they shouldn't have gone in with soldiers. Do you know they lost about 500 soldiers trying to protect Gazans? And they're only twice as good in fighting the Hamas on the ground. But they're a million times as good fighting them from the air because the Hamas doesn't have any air force. So I would have said, do a little bit more mopping up from the air before you go in and waste Israeli soldiers. Every Israeli soldier is a precious life, and they spent those lives saving Gazans. So to call them genocidal is just ludicrous.
I have to say two things here. One is, of course, to invite you to check out in my channel the Good Guys podcast, which I conduct with my good friend Oscar Petri. We did one episode, which is called the Genocide Show, and that one discusses the use of the term genocide as a kind of rhetorical insult, an ad hominem attack, in order to retain moral superiority. Of course, the second thing that I would like to ask you about is the Israeli citizens. There were also non-Israeli citizens who just happened to be going by among the hostages, who were also not only the women and children, but also non-belligerents who were passing by, who were caught in what was explicitly stated many times from different quarters as we desire the obliteration and destruction of every single Jew from the opponent belligerent. So I know that Jewish religious Jews who belong to a synagogue can do a migration to Israel, travel, and acquire the Israeli citizenship. This is not extended to Messianic Jews, that is, uh, Jews or persons who aspire to adhere to the Old Testament, Tanakh, Torah rules while accepting Jesus of Nazareth as Messiah. These are not allowed to acquire the Israeli citizenship, and the exceptions that have happened in law in terms of jurisprudence have been when they did have ancestors, grandparents, or parents who were, as a matter of fact, Israeli citizens. How would you feel at the suggestion that the policy should also be open to Messianic Jews?
What do you mean by a Messianic Jew first?
A Messianic Jew is a person who keeps the celebrations of traditional Judaism while at the same time claiming to acknowledge the Messiahhood of Jesus of Nazareth.
Uh,
So, so they are Christians who behave, for all intents and purposes, also like religious Jews.
and they're not allowed in as citizens in Israel?
They are not allowed to acquire citizenship in the way regular religious Jews can.
I see. Well, I'm an irreligious Jew. I'm an atheist, but I assume I was bar mitzvahed. My parents were Jewish. My mother was Jewish. I'm a Jew. When the next Hitler arises, by the way, in the Babylon Bee, what they said is Hitler saves the Jews. Why? Because Trump is always called Hitler, and what he just did to get the hostages out, Hitler was saving the Jews. Well, that's the Babylon Bee. Um, the Messianic Jews, I think, are not Jewish. They're Christian, even though
Well,
they don't eat pork and they might have a yarmulke and stuff like
yeah.
that, but they're Christian. And you see, I'm an open borders person. I believe in open borders.
But wait a second. Wait a second. I want to stop you there because you are Walter Block, privatize everything Walter Block. If it moves, privatize it. If it doesn't move, privatize it. This is not, we want anarcho-capitalism immediately right now. This is a policy suggestion. What I am asking is, religious Jews can traditionally go to Israel and acquire the Israeli citizenship. And the reason why I mentioned religious Jews is because it is not closed only to circumcised halakhic Jews, people born of a Jewish mother. A person as an adult can become a Jew. Javier Milei in Argentina aspires to become a Jew. But this is not the case for people who keep Torah and accept the Messiahhood of Jesus Christ. Would you oppose a policy that would enable Messianic Jews in the world to also go to Israel?
Well, I would say it's not really up to me. It's up to the owners of Israel. And I'm not an owner of Israel. The Israelis are the owners of Israel. And, I would say it's up to them whether the Messianic Jews should be allowed in. And I wouldn't call them Messianic Jews. I would call them Christians who follow some Jewish practices. But based on the expression, the description that you've given. So I would say it's up to them. But I wanted to talk a little bit about open immigration because you raised the question of who is allowed to get into Israel. And I'm an open borders person. However, we just can't let in murderers and rapists. Again, libertarianism is not a suicide pact, and open borders is part of libertarianism. But I think you have to be careful when you talk about open borders from a libertarian point of view. Now, my claim would be that what we should do in the United States, with which I'm most familiar, is every square inch of the country should be owned privately. The rivers, the lakes, the mountains. One problem with that is there's such a thing called substandard land. See, right now, suppose a Martian comes down and he's homesteading land in the middle of Alaska somewhere, and ICE comes along to him and says, well, you got to leave, go back to Mars. And the guy says, well, what libertarian principle am I violating? And the answer is none. He's peaceable. He's homesteading Alaska. So this would be improper to kick him out. So what we should do is get all this substandard land owned somehow through charity maybe. And now every square inch of the land is owned. And now somebody comes in without permission of anyone. He's a homesteader, and we kick him out because he's a homesteader of private property rights. But now I invite somebody in. I invite a Syrian or a Gazan or a Palestinian, and he starts committing crimes. I'm responsible for him. Therefore, I'd better not be inviting murderers and rapists in because I'll have to be punished. Now, the argument against this is, well, how about my children? And parents are responsible for children up until a certain age. I don't know what the age is, 12 years old, something like that. But I think there's a disanalogy because when you have a child, you don't know that he's going to be a murderer or a rapist. Whereas if you invite somebody from somewhere and he commits crimes, you either do know or you should know. Whereas a parent can't know anything about the whether the future kid will be a criminal. So I think there's a disanalogy in that objection to my claim. So what I want to have is my cake and eat it too. I want to have open immigration, but I don't want murderers and rapists in there. Now, ideally, every square inch of Israel should be owned privately, and no one should be allowed in there unless by invitation. We don't live in such a world, and in the present world, I'm not saying that the United States should just let everyone in, because that would be suicidal. Nor should Israel let everyone in. I was in a debate with Bumper Hornberger, and he said, "Look, you favor open immigration. Why can't all the Hamas people come in and live in Israel?" And the answer is, did you ever read the Hamas constitution? They say they want to kill all the Jews. Now, I have to get back to the Babylon Bee. The Babylon Bee was saying about Donald Trump's 20-point program that Hamas was sort of supporting it. And then they read that they can't kill any more Jews. And they said, forget about it. Babylon Bee is saying this, but it's so apropos. I mean, the reason that they're so good is not just because they're so funny, it's because they really put their finger on what's important. These people just want to kill all Jews. It's part of their constitution, part of their covenant. You want people like that in the country? What are you, crazy? You can't do that. So I don't think I'm being inconsistent in being an open borders person and saying that all Hamas shouldn't be allowed to go migrate into Israel.
Since you mentioned children, I want to touch on a controversial topic. I'm going to read to you from leftist website, the BBC. Guatemala police clash with Jewish sect over 160 at-risk children. Authorities in Guatemala have resisted efforts by members of a Jewish sect to recapture 160 children rescued from its premises. The children were taken into care on Friday when police raided a farm used by the Left Tahor movement, which is under investigation in several countries for serious sexual offenses. The Left Tahor sect is known for extremist practices and imposing a strict regime on its followers. It advocates child marriage, inflicts harsh punishments for even minor transgressions, and requires women and girls as young as 3 years old to completely cover up with their robes. The sect accuses Guatemalan authorities of religious persecution. Now, this seems to beg for a libertarian answer.
Well, I think even the Mormons demand that their women maybe not cover themselves up, but dress modestly. I don't think that they want miniskirts. If adult women agree with that, then that's fine. And for 6-year-old girls, well, they have to do what their parents say. And I don't think not being allowed to have a miniskirt is a crime.
I demand that my woman dress immodestly.
Immodestly. Like with a miniskirt and low-cut blouse.
Well, that is a matter of her own judgment. But precisely this is the crux of the argument, which is that some people have argued that from a libertarian standpoint, these cultural practices are actually betrothed to the parents, that the parents, not the state, should have the authority. What is your opinion?
Well, let's divide this group into adult women and girls. And let's call the cutoff, I don't know, 12 years old or 14 or whatever the girl becomes a woman. If adult women accept this, the Hador, where they cover up everything except their eyes, if they accept it, fine, that's their culture. That's not a rights violation. And now for 6-year-old girls, I don't think it's a rights violation to tell a 6-year-old girl you have to dress this way. I mean, everyone tells their 6-year-old girl how to dress. I don't really know much about this situation, but let's talk about circumcision. which is I have an article written, circumcision is a rights violation. That is for babies. You're an adult, you want to convert to Judaism, you want to get circumcised at age, what are you, 30 or 25 or so?
Well, thank you for putting me on the spot here, Walter, but I'm turning 40 on December 26th. You know you have my address, so you can send a gift on the
You,
due date.
you old duffer, you're way over the hill. I'm 84, so I can tell you that you're over the hill at 40. If you're 40 and you want to be have circumcision, you want to convert to Judaism, God bless you. You're welcome. But a baby, I think that's child abuse. So I have written on that. I published on that with a co-author or two. I forget who I wrote it with, but I think that's child abuse. And
Even though I am a libertarian, I tend to lean with the conservatives as far as bodily mutilation goes.
well, circumcision is bodily mutilation. And
Now,
they do it, I think, when the baby is 8 days old and the baby can't consent. And, if they cut off the finger, the tip of the finger of the baby, I mean, that would obviously be child abuse. I don't see why circumcision isn't child abuse. Now, I realize that this is against the Jewish tradition and there are reasons for it, but I think it's child abuse. And
Saint Paul solved that problem for us with circumcision of the spirit.
okay, you can do all that you want. That's not child abuse. Now, I realize that I'm out of sync with the Jewish tradition, but that's I'm a libertarian first, last, and always.
I want to ask you, because we have little time left, to give me, because everybody knows you for, you know, the famous works. Everybody knows you for, ripoff of St. Thomas of Aquinas, defending the indefendable. But there are some books, lesser known works by Walter Block, that I would like us to give us spoilers, and maybe some people will be inspired to buy. So I'm going to just read the title and you tell me what the gist of the book is.
Uh-oh,
Uh,
I'm in trouble. I've written 33 books. I don't remember every book. You got to help me out.
you tell that to your students in Loyola University.
Well, go ahead. I'll try to do my best to remember what I wrote.
An Austro-libertarian critique of public choice.
Ah, yes, and I co-authored that with Tom DiLorenzo, who now won't speak to me because of the differences on Israel. I'm sort of a big fan of public choice in some ways. When I was in graduate school, what I was taught is the following syllogism: we want perfection. Who could argue with that? We want perfection. Markets are imperfect. Therefore, government. I didn't much like that. And you know what the public choice people did? Brilliantly. They said, we want perfection. Government is imperfect. Therefore, free enterprise. I like that much better. Both are fallacious, but I liked it much better. And public choice, look, there are only three schools of thought that are free market. One is the Austrian, the other is the Chicago school, and the third is public choice. So they can't be all bad. They are free enterprise. On the other hand, there are some problems. One of the problems I have with them is just a minor problem. They have this thing called rent seeking. What's rent seeking? Rent seeking is you go to Washington, D.C., and you bribe them, and they give you a tariff against your competitor, or they give you a subsidy. And that's very bad. But why call it rent seeking? I mean, rent is a good thing. You rent a car, you rent an apartment, you rent a bicycle. Why pick on rent? Why not call it loot seeking or booty seeking or piracy seeking? It just shows that their heads aren't tacked on the right way. But that's a minor problem. It's just terminological. But it indicates where they're coming from. They're not coming from an accurate place. Otherwise, they would call it more accurately. Now,
As
again,
a,
I'm in
as,
favor of
as a
the
certain
concept.
Jew,
I just don't like the name.
as a
But
certain
then,
Jew from Austria would have said, you are a bunch of socialists.
Mises said that about Milton Friedman. at the Mont Pelerin Society, where Friedman was talking about his negative income tax and other ways of welfare. And I think Mises was right. But let me get back to the criticism of the public choice. And here, Tom DiLorenzo and I, old buddies for 40 years, we co-authored this book. And see, the problem with the public choice is that they regard government as like a private enterprise. There are firms, there are partnerships, there are kibbutzim, and then there's government, and it's all the same. They don't realize that government is per se an invasive institution. It taxes people whether they like it or not, and we have a word for demanding money from people under duress when they haven't agreed, and it's called theft. Government is per se a robbery institution, and they don't see it that way. And you see, in the market, there's unanimity. I bought this shirt. I paid $20 for it. I valued the shirt more than $20. You sold me the shirt. You valued it at $5. You had plenty of them. We both gained. There was unanimity. Well, where's the unanimity in government when we haven't agreed to pay? And then they come up with this crazy thing called conceptual unanimity. I mean, this is just, I don't know what. It's not kosher, to get back to my Judaic roots. So this is...
We say that here in the Eastern Netherlands, because there were Jewish industrialists who built the manufactory of textiles here, and to say that is niet kosher is quite common. Now, second book. Labor economics from a free market perspective, employing the unemployable.
Well, I got employing the unemployable from defending the undefendable. That was sort of cheating. But what I do in this book is I attack unions and the minimum wage law. Now, I'm not against unions per se. If the unions have two roles, one of which is legitimate and the other is illegitimate, but none of them ever stick to the legitimate one. The legitimate one is a quit. If you quit your job, you have a right to quit your job. Well, I should be careful here because there is such a thing called, what do they call it? I can't think of the word. Specific performance contracts. I hire you to do something, and in the middle of the thing you quit. Well, we have to be careful about that. You're the heart surgeon, and you just took the heart out of me, and you're going to put another heart in me, and you decide to quit. Well, not so kosher. You can't quit. You have a specific performance contract. And also voluntary slavery would be in this book. My son has a horrible disease. He'll die unless you're the surgeon, unless you get $50 million. I don't have $50 million. So we make a deal. I'll be your slave. You give you do the operation for the $50 million, and now I'm your slave. Is this a legitimate contract? It's a big debatable issue among libertarians. Robert Nozick agrees with me. Murray Rothbard doesn't. I think that this is a legitimate contract. So forget about those type of things. Otherwise, you have a right to quit. In an ordinary job, you can quit. Give 2 weeks notice. If you can't quit, you're a slave. The big problem with slavery is you couldn't quit. I mean, slavery wasn't so bad, and I got in trouble with the New York Times for saying this. They give you gruel, they give you a little house to live, and when they come with the whip and you say, well, I quit, well, then slavery is innocuous. The big problem with slavery is you couldn't quit. So you have a right to quit. And if you have a right to quit, the other 500 workers in my factory also have a right to quit, because you don't lose your right to quit just because other people quit. So if all the union did was have a right to quit, that would be legitimate. When you're alone, come to me and say you want a raise, I say, don't let the door hit you on the way out. But now you come to me as the union leader and you say, we're all going to quit unless you give us a raise. And now I start saying, well, how much do you want? Let's bargain. Because, I've got contracts, and it's true, you're not the greatest workers, but what the heck, it would take a lot of effort to get 500 new workers. So if all the union did was that, unions are legit. But then they do one other thing. They surround the factory. They don't let raw materials in or finished goods out. They beat up scabs, which is a hateful word. They don't allow people to compete with them. And when they do that, then that's very bad. I was looking around for a legitimate union, and I was in Canada, and I came across the Christian Labor Association of Canada, the union. And I said, would you beat up scabs? No. Would you blockade the factory? No. And I figured I got a winner. And then I said, well, what do you think about union legislation where they compel the employer to bargain with the bargain fairly with the workers? And I said, oh, we favor that. I said, well, then you're not a legitimate union,
Yeah.
because why should I bargain fairly? I want a divorce from you guys.
As Stefan Molyneux from Canada would say, put the gun down.
That's a very good statement.
Now, I want to ask you finally, if I were to write a letter to Santa Block to send me something this Christmas, or my birthday, as you mentioned, December 26th, it would be this book. This book is very mysterious. Action and Choice, an Introduction to Economics, Walter Block and Ivan Jankovic. Can you tell me about this book?
Yeah, I remember this book. I'm using it right now in my intro class. It's a textbook. It's an introductory economic textbook inspired by people like Murray Rothbard and Ludwig von Mises and Henry Hazlitt. And it tries to explain the Austrian view. It uses supply and demand, and it tries to undermine, interpersonal comparisons of utility, which justify welfare. It's just it tries to undermine the case for antitrust. It talks about unions. It talks about minimum wage. It talks about rent control. A lot on supply and demand. It's just an ordinary textbook. And I recommend it highly. Ivan Jankovic is a colleague of mine, a co-author of mine. It's just an ordinary textbook with a little Austrian oomph in it and a little public choice oomph in it, because public choice has contributed some stuff, and a little Chicago oomph in it as well. But it's a critique of the minimum wage law. It's a critique of rent control. It's a critique of tariffs. Go ahead.
And final question, since you mentioned Chicago, was, to your knowledge, at the time, Murray Rothbard an admirer of the Chicago Bulls?
Well, there were three schools of thought. The saltwater economists. Saltwater is California and MIT. And then there's the freshwater economists, Chicago. And Murray was a no-water economist because he was in Nevada, and there's no water in Nevada. So I don't know about his views on the Chicago Bulls. But I do know his views about the Chicago School, which is similar to mine because I get them from him. Namely, they do some good work, we have to acknowledge. On the other hand, they favor antitrust. They favor not getting rid of rent control, but phasing it out. They're sort of moderate free enterprises, which, is better than being a socialist. Even though Mises called Friedman a socialist, every once in a while I call Friedman a socialist, and then more intelligent people say, well, under whose rule would you rather be, Milton Friedman's or Bernie Sanders? And I have to say, well, Milton Friedman is not a socialist.
I have to then ask you, if there's no clear answer about the Chicago Bulls, about Black Guy, your opinion on Thomas Sowell.
Oh, Thomas Sowell. Oh, wow. Wow. Well, I'm a big fan of his. I have to tell you my Thomas Sowell story. I'm an editor of a book on discrimination, and he and Walter Williams and four or five other guys, I asked, would you contribute to this compilation? And they all said yes. And then Thomas Sowell, who I revere, sent me a note that if you change one word in this, I'm pulling my article out of your compilation. Evidently, he had bad experiences with editors who would change exactly what he said. And I assured him, that I wouldn't do that even for a socialist if I had a socialist in the compilation. I'm not that kind of an editor. But then what happened is I found 4 or 5 typographical errors. And I said, is it okay if I change this? And he said, okay. And that's my Thomas Sowell story. But I'm a big admirer of his. I always tell my students one of the greatest quotes. I don't have it verbatim. It's something like, it's a very bad economic system if you pay no penalty for making a mistake. Katrina killed 1,900 New Orleanians when the levees fell and the New Orleans a little bit below sea level, so the water came rushing in. 1,900 people died. From a humanitarian point of view, we're not happy with that. But from an economic point of view, what really immiserates us is those people are still in business. The Army Corps of Engineers is still in business. Another book of mine, Why We Should Privatize Rivers, Lakes, and Oceans. If the Mississippi River were owned by the Mississippi River Corporation and it killed 1,900 people, that new management would take over. Look, if McDonald's killed 1,900 people, God forbid, we'd go to Burger King. So what Thomas Sowell is saying is that if you make a mistake, you have to pay a penalty, you have a good economy.
No further questions, Mr. Block.
Well, then I'll give you one response, and it's a pleasure to talk to you. And my only criticism of you, where do you live?
In the Netherlands.
You should move to New Orleans so we can have lunch every once in a while. That's my big criticism of you. Thanks for having me.
I will try to convince my wife to let me go visit you for Mardi Gras. Okay. And hopefully we go to some chapel in Loyola University and pray together, Walter.
Sounds good. Thanks again for having me. It's a lot of fun. I very much enjoy talking to you.
Tot ziens.